Was Madara right? Is Danzo a good guy? Is Sasuke a well-written character? But there is one thing that we do all agree on. The way that Naruto was raised makes no sense. Responsibilities were bungled. People that were supposed to step up didn't. He was thrown into a room and forgotten when he had the most powerful tailed beast sealed inside of him. There was a kid in the village over in the hidden sand with a significantly weaker tailed beast sealed inside of him who was destroying the village because he was being mistreated. And yet, for some reason, nobody decided to step up and be the father and or mother to this child. And not only that, he was relentlessly bullied. And because the way that Naruto was raised was so egregiously bad, people have made theories about why this possibly could have happened. Theories that explain away the torture that was Naruto's childhood. Theories that state that Naruto's childhood and upbringing was done on purpose to make him the Hokage. I know it sounds far-fetched, but before I get to explaining this theory, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And since we're talking about doing things on purpose, how about you guys go ahead and do a couple of things on purpose for me, like following my 3 other YouTube pages. One is NC Gamer 23, where instead of talking anime, I play video games. The other is Hammer's Collection, where instead of talking anime while sitting in this chair, I talk it while I build those big old statues. And the third one is called The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking Naruto, I talk, well, literally any other anime. Before we get into all that, guys, today we have a brand new sponsor for the page, Rosetta Stone. I couldn't be happier about today's sponsor. Language plays a really large part in my life. As somebody who's fluent in both English and Spanish, having another language under my belt has helped me immensely throughout my life. However, just speaking English and Spanish isn't enough for me. You see, my wonderful girlfriend, Dorothy's first language was Chinese, specifically Mandarin, which means that the majority of her family only speaks Mandarin. And let me tell you right now, as a native Romanic language speaker, you're not gonna pick up on context clues of Mandarin. But that's where Rosetta Stone has come in for me. I love my girlfriend a lot, and I want to be able to communicate with her family. And Rosetta Stone is slowly but surely making that a reality for me. I found myself able to ask her things at the dinner table in Chinese, where before I had to ask things like, can you pass the tea in English? Now I can ask, ni neng ba cha di gokuma. And listen, I understand that my Chinese is far from perfect, but this is a path that I get to undertake with the help of Rosetta Stone. I've tried with other language apps, but it just never seemed to click with me. And Rosetta Stone has not only helped me memorize which Chinese character is which, but they've also helped me with tonal inflections. And by learning the language of my girlfriend's family, I feel significantly closer to them. And knowing if they're talking about me is always nice as well. But there's a myriad of languages you could learn on Rosetta Stone. Japanese, for example. You might not have to worry about sub or dub if you use Rosetta Stone. You work hard enough, you might just be able to watch anime, raw and cut. You could do a trip to Japan and see all the sights and sounds that you want to see and never have to worry about a miscommunication. So what are you guys waiting for? Download Rosetta Stone and learn how to say NC Hammer 23 is the best YouTuber out there in any language you want. I'll be looking in the comments. So come on, guys, click the link in my description below to get a lifetime subscription to Rosetta Stone for only $179. That's 40% off the usual $299 sticker price. This deal is exclusive to people watching this right now. But even if you buy Rosetta Stone and somehow you aren't satisfied with the product, there is a 30-day guaranteed refund. Listen, guys, Rosetta Stone is an investment into yourself. In learning a new language, or possibly many more new languages for $179, now that is a good investment. So, Naruto's upbringing, a singular apartment in the slums of Konoha, fed ramen and spoiled milk. Treated with relentless hate and ire by an entire village who blamed him for something he was barely alive for. The sacking of Konoha by Kurama. The physical representation of the fear and hatred towards tailed beasts within a city, a Jinchuriki. But not only that, a child. Naruto, for as long as we've known him, has had to raise himself. With barely any allowance, no supervision, and no parents to guide him, it is a miracle that Naruto did not become a villain. And while one day we will speculate about what would have happened if Naruto had turned bad, that is not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about why was Naruto left like that? How does it make sense? And the way that some people have found to rationalize this situation is simply to assume it was done on purpose. See, this theory in essence is actually rather simple. Essentially, the fans who created this theory found it so hard to believe that Naruto, who was the son of the 4th Hokage and an Uzumaki descendant, would be ignored by the entirety of the village and treated with hatred and ire. And that wasn't even taking into account that he was the Jinchuriki of Kurama. And therefore the theory very simply states that Naruto was actually deprived of attention and love, so he would crave it. What do I mean by that? Well, essentially this theory states that the higher-ups of Konoha decided that Naruto was going to need to be a hero. I mean, he was the child of two of the most powerful people in the entire village, and he had their most powerful weapons sealed inside of him. So in order to make sure that Naruto would become a hero, they decided to starve him of affection and love so he would crave it from Konoha and all of its higher ups. Essentially, don't give him the thing he wants, so he's driven to achieve it. And that way he'll live his entire life trying to have the village love him, and therefore will become a hero to save the masses and receive their love. And while technically this is what happens, Naruto's childhood is so devoid of love and affection that he becomes rabid for it, and therefore does become a hero in order to satiate that love and affection that he's wanted for his entire life. So hypothetically, if this theory was correct, the higher ups of Konoha did a really good job. However, to believe this theory is to give entirely too much credit to just Konoha as a whole. See, I'll dive into why Naruto was raised the way he was in a second, but first we need to break down some of the fundamental issues with this theory. You see, the way that Naruto was raised was unacceptable for any kind of child. There's quite literally a million better different options that they could have given to Naruto than what they gave to him. Naruto, if he was a regular child, that is not the son of the 4th Hokage and Kushina and the Jinchuriki of Kurama, would have just been sent to the orphanage after his parents died, because Konoha very much has an orphanage. We know this because Kabuto is heavily involved in it, and Kabuto is older than Naruto, which would imply that if Kabuto could be pulled into the orphanage and raised there, that there's no excuse that Naruto couldn't have been raised there. But if even for 1 second we assume that they couldn't do this because of Naruto's situation, there is still plenty of other options, because the option of leaving a hyper-powerful child to live on his own and have the entire village pick on him is borderline suicide. How many children do you know that were bullied relentlessly grew up to be like President of the United States? People who are demeaned and hurt by the people around them do not grow up wanting to protect and impress those people. If anything, the success that they may achieve later in life is done in order to rub it in the faces of those who bullied and or picked on them. I would know. I'm doing it right now. But even if we take Naruto's mental space out of the equation, there's still the fact that he's a Jinchuriki. And like I stated earlier, Gaara was in the hidden sand. People knew of Gaara's existence. And the reason that people knew of Gaara's existence is because very often he would rage out of control and Shukaku would manifest. And every single time Rasa would have to use his gold sand technique to weigh down Shukaku and seal him back into Gaara. Konoha has already had Kurama destroy it once. At the very least, why wouldn't you keep an eye on the Jinchuriki child in order to make sure that Kurama wasn't gonna break out of them? Let's say Naruto's having a bad day one day and he accidentally takes a dodgeball to the side of the face from some big bully. Oh, now he's crying. Oh, now there's Kurama. He should at the very least have somebody around him who can suppress the power of Kurama and or put Kurama to sleep like a Sharingan wielder. Because even if Naruto didn't grow up to have malignant feelings towards Konoha, not teaching him how to manifest and or control Kurama's rage is gonna lead to some complications down the line. So if hypothetically this theory of allowing Naruto to live on his own and allow all of Konoha to starve him of affection and love is true, you have now isolated a child with no control over their nuke-like abilities and hypothetically made yourself their enemy, in hopes that that child becomes starved for affection and love and therefore comes to you as a hero in order to get it from you. Not to bring a live action television show into this, but that's essentially Homelander. And that's the situation they were hoping for. So obviously this theory is dumb and not real. So let's get into the real reasons that Naruto's upbringing was the way that Naruto's upbringing was. See, when people talk about Naruto's childhood, people tend to point fingers at a lot of the wrong people. Most people look at Hiruzen and say he's in the wrong for the way that Naruto was brought up. And while technically there was a lot more Hiruzen could have done, it wasn't all Hiruzen's fault. Before we even begin to point fingers at Hiruzen, there's other people we should be blaming. Because if we're being entirely real, the person to blame for Naruto's upbringing isn't Hiruzen, it's Obito. Listen, there's a reason Obito is one of my least favorite characters in the entirety of Naruto. Outside of the fact that he was the person who killed the majority of the children and the women in the Uchiha massacre, he also knew that Kushina was the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. And he knew that he wouldn't be able to break into Konoha and get his hands on her unless the seal on the Nine Tails was weakened. And therefore Obito strategically planned to attack Konoha on the night that Kushina was giving birth. Therefore, he was not only making plans to essentially kill a pregnant woman, but also orphan a child, and Naruto truly became an orphan because of Obito's choice to attack on that night. But unfortunately, the fault train doesn't necessarily stop there when it comes to making Naruto's childhood incredibly shitty. See, Kushina and Minato basically did everything they could on the night of Obito's attack. Kushina unfortunately has Kurama rage outside of her, but it doesn't kill her instantly because she's an Uzumaki. Minato 1v1s Obito into utter oblivion, and therefore he has to retreat. And then the village elders and Danzo, who we're going to be talking about a lot today, tell Hiruzen that he can't send the Uchihas to the front lines to suppress Kurama because they believe Kurama is actually being controlled by a wielder of a Sharingan. Now, my opinion on this move fluctuates, because technically, yes, Kurama was under a genjutsu by Obito, and his presence under that genjutsu was pretty clear to anybody who had a discerning eye. However, if they had decided to send the Uchihas to the front lines and suppress Kurama with the power of the Sharingan, Minato and Kushina probably would have lived. However, because the Uchihas weren't sent, and therefore the majority of the fighting force against Kurama was Minato and Kushina, since Hiruzen was in charge of getting Kurama out of the village, and Kushina was in a weakened state, her adamantite chains weren't enough to fully seal Kurama. And because her adamantite chains weren't enough to fully seal Kurama, Kurama pierces both Kushina and Minato like a little ring. And it's because Kurama donuts the two of them that Kurama can't be resealed into Kushina. Resealing Kurama into Kushina after she got a new hole punched in her would either kill her or just not work. And therefore the only person left was Naruto, who was half Uzumaki, so technically he was a good vessel to be a Jinchuriki. However, the fault of a bad childhood also falls on Minato in this circumstance, because Minato did not have enough chakra to fully pull out the entirety of Kurama's soul from his body, because Reaper Death Seal works on a sliding scale. If you have more chakra than the person you're using Reaper Death Seal on, you can pull out the entirety of their soul, bing bang boom. But if you have less chakra than the person you're using Reaper Death Seal on, you can't pull out the entirety of their soul. And because Minato had just received the tummy tuck of a lifetime and had also just been fighting Obito, he didn't have enough chakra to get all of Kurama's, well, chakra and or soul. And it's at this point that he decides to seal half of Kurama within himself and half within Naruto. However, since Kurama is basically just chakra and therefore kind of exists metaphysically, his halves exist as two separate halves, yin and yang. That is to say that once Minato splits Kurama's chakra into two separate pools, they become the good side of Kurama and the bad side of Kurama. And while doing that is not necessarily the problem, Minato decides to seal the bad side of Kurama inside of his infant. Why does he do this? We quite literally never get an answer. You see, we know that Minato decided to seal half of Kurama's chakra into Naruto because he heard of the child of prophecy, well, prophecy from Jiraiya. And Minato figured that with this power of Kurama, Naruto would be able to become the child of prophecy who would lead the world into a peaceful era. Which is great. It's a good enough rationale to seal half of the world's most dangerous beast into your child, but you are about to enter a Shinigami stomach for eternity. The half of Kurama that you take with you should probably be the bad half. And yes, I know you have to fight forever in the Shinigami stomach, so I'd probably want to take the good side so we can make amends. But that is your baby which you are now giving half of the world's most dangerous animal to, but don't worry, it's the half that hates everything. So you can go sit in the death god's stomach and have tea for the next 16 years. What's even wilder about this is Minato knew that the 8 trigram seal that he used to seal Kurama would erode after 16 years. That is to say that he knew that this 8 trigram seal that he was using was a temporary stopgap that would need to be adjusted with time, which means that Minato, as he was sealing half of Kurama into Naruto, knew that he was sealing the worst half, and also there was a possibility that worst half was gonna break out. Because here's the thing, if you put the good half in Naruto, you don't really have to worry about Kurama trying to break out. And sure, your limbo experience of fighting the bad half of Kurama for the next 16 years is quite literal hell, but who knows, maybe you could have pulled a Naruto in the Shinigami stomach and befriended that side of Kurama. So even before we've gotten to Hiruzen to blame for Naruto's upbringing, we have to look at Obito and Minato. But since we're talking about Hiruzen, let's talk about Hiruzen. Yes, absolutely. Minato asked Hiruzen to raise Naruto, and Hiruzen didn't really do that. But let's go ahead and step into Hiruzen's shoes for like 3 seconds here. Hiruzen is probably the longest reigning Hokage ever. I say probably because we don't really know how long Hashirama was Hokage. He technically had to take over as Hokage in the first Great Shinobi World War. after Tobirama died. He then had to steer Konoha through the Second and Third Great Shinobi World Wars. Basically, everything bad that happens throughout Naruto happens while Hiruzen is Hokage. And because he acknowledges that so much bad shit has happened while he was Hokage, he steps down in order to take the entirety of the blame of all of the deaths of the wars that he's led Konoha through onto himself. He essentially retired in shame in order to make sure that Danzo and everybody else who wanted the continuation of the Third Great Ninja War would get the blood they wanted. However, the blood that they wanted was simply Hiruzen's. You see, because without Hiruzen stepping down as the third Hokage, the Third Great Shinobi World War would have continued. And Konoha, who was winning, mind you, probably would have marched a very bloody offensive campaign against basically all of the other ninja villages. Hiruzen, not wanting this, decided to step down in order to stop the war. And Minato has been Hokage for like 3 years. And then boom, Kurama's in the middle of the village and the Hokage is off fighting a dude in a mask. Hiruzen literally has to push Kurama outside of Konoha to protect all of its citizens. And then he gets gaslit into not letting the Uchiha go fight by the village elders and Danzo. And then, wouldn't you know it, the giant fox he just pushed out of Konoha impaled the Hokage and his wife, leaving a baby with half of the fox that just impaled his parents. So now Hiruzen has to resume his mantle as the third Hokage. Only problem is, Konoha's destroyed, the Uchihas are pissed off, and we have this demon baby. Since quite literally everybody saw the Sharingan in Kurama's eyes, Hiruzen has to move the Uchihas to the outskirts of the village. I'm not saying I agree with this move, that's just why he had to do it. And now Hiruzen is left with a city in shambles, the most powerful clan in it moved to the outskirts and even angrier, and a baby which isn't his filled with the strongest beast on earth. Oh, and mind you, the Third Great Shinobi World War ended like 4 years ago, so now Konoha was more vulnerable than literally ever, and we know that the other villages aren't above attacking Konoha while they're down in the dirt, because the Hidden Stone mounted an attack against Konoha after the Konoha Crush arc. So now Hiruzen has to rebuild the city and defend it from all the other shinobi villages that they just pissed off in a war that they basically won. And while obviously Hiruzen owed a lot to Minato, I can't necessarily fault him for not putting Naruto at the top of his list of importance. At least, at first. Because who's to say that Hiruzen wouldn't have raised Naruto if some things hadn't gone wrong? You see, after Kurama had been released and the majority of Konoha had been destroyed, the village was looking for somebody to blame. However, Hiruzen was a hero, Minato was a hero, Kushina was a hero, and we don't even know who attacked because he was wearing a mask. And the majority of people don't even know about said masked man. So who do we blame for the destruction and loss of death? Well, probably the giant fox. But where's the giant fox now? Well, the majority of people never would have found out the answer to that question. Except unfortunately, some people did have the answer to that question, and one of those people was Danzo. I wish I could say we're done talking about him, but we're not. There's a lot more to go. You see, Danzo recognized that Konoha needed a central hate, something that would unify them in this trying time. And therefore, Danzo leaked the message that Naruto was the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, aka the thing that probably killed your mother. You see, this is why I love Danzo. Unrelentingly evil, decided to bring the entirety of a destroyed Konoha together in their hatred for a baby. You see, now at this point, Hiruzen had two options. One, lean in or take away the thing that's unifying a significantly damaged village. And I'm not saying he made the right choice here. I'm just offering perspective. See, if Hiruzen had taken Naruto under his wing and decided to treat him as his own child, well, the entire village couldn't very well be justified in their hate for Naruto. I mean, Hiruzen's a hero. He's led Konoha for decades. We're not gonna hate the kid that he's got. However, Danzo gets in Hiruzen's head. If Hiruzen gets rid of that symbol of unity and hatred, will the village start to destroy itself from the inside out? And so Hiruzen took the only choice he thought he had, exiling the child to live alone in a life of misery. And while Hiruzen did occasionally check in on Naruto, he far from raised him. But at the same time, one of the reasons Hiruzen may not have actually raised Naruto is because the last child he raised was Orochimaru. You see, politics be damned, Hiruzen once took an orphan under his wing before. Orochimaru was an orphan that Hiruzen found, and therefore Hiruzen raised Orochimaru like he was his own son. However, regardless of the direction that Hiruzen tried to impart to Orochimaru, he watched watched Orochimaru stray further and further into the darkness. Basically, just before Kurama raged out and destroyed the entire village, Orochimaru had fled the village after Hiruzen had caught him doing human experiments and was unable to stop him. Hiruzen had seen what his parenting abilities were in Orochimaru, and maybe he was afraid that he would do the same thing to Naruto. So he did what he thought was best and create a distance between Naruto and himself. While he did occasionally check up to make sure Naruto was alive, it was far from satisfactory as far as parenting goes. And once again, I'm not saying what he did was right. What he did was horrifically wrong, but I'm trying to offer some perspective here. But we're not even done laying the blame yet. Do you guys know where Naruto got his name from? Jiraiya's book. You see, Minato loved Jiraiya's first book so much that he actually decided to name his child after the main character from Jiraiya's book. And Minato tells Jiraiya he's actually going to be doing this, to which Jiraiya states that if you name him after the main character of my book, that will make him my godson, to which Minato acknowledges and Jiraiya agrees to. See, I don't know how many of you know what a godson or a godmother or a godfather is technically supposed to do or what those roles or names even mean, so I'll explain it. A godfather and mother are typically a couple that's close to the parents of the godson or goddaughter. However, you don't choose godmother and godfather to your parents based off how much you like your friends. It's mostly based off, well, obviously, yes, liking your friends, but also responsibility. See, you wouldn't choose your drunkest friend to be the godfather of your child, because if you make somebody the godfather and or godmother of your child, that means if you pass away, they have to raise your child. That is what the title is for. In the events of the godchild's parents passing away, the godmother and godfather are to raise said child. So Jiraiya, who is Naruto's quite literal godfather, should have been the person like legally obligated to raising Naruto. And that's not even talking about the fact that he was also Minato's sensei, which further drives on the fact that it should have been Jiraiya who actually raised Naruto. Like, obviously, yes, Minato asked Hiruzen to keep an eye on him. That's only because Hiruzen was right there as Minato was dying. What was Minato gonna say? Hey, make sure Jiraiya keeps an eye on this kid? And it's not like the news of Minato's death never got back to Jiraiya and he knew Naruto was born, so he could have returned to Konoha to raise Naruto. Hell, he could have returned to Konoha to become the 4th Hokage, or I guess 5th. But even if you say, well, Jiraiya was out being the pseudo-shadow Hokage, keeping an eye on all the things that were threatening Konoha. And in actuality, Naruto should have gone to live with Mikoto Uchiha, because Mikoto and Kushina are really close, and therefore Mikoto should have stepped up in order to adopt this brand new orphan baby. But like, when you look at the politics of Konoha in this moment, that is quite literally the worst thing that could have happened. Hiruzen and Danzo were like, hey, we thinking Uchiha was the person who unleashed Kurama. And technically, they were right, and they knew the Uchiha were upset, especially after being moved to the edge of the village. So why on God's green earth would they allow Mikoto, which by the way is Sasuke's mother, for those of you who don't know, to adopt the baby with the thing inside of it that they think that the Uchihas released? So it would have been kind of funny if he went to go live with the Uchihas and he was like, I finally have a family, and then Itachi. The Uchiha massacre would have been a whole lot more complicated if Naruto was there though. So even if hypothetically Mikoto did want to adopt Naruto, there's no way that the higher ups would have allowed her to do that. And with the information that Hiruzen had in regards to the Kurama attack, it would have been kind of crazy for him to allow Naruto to live with the Uchihas. Also, I just read a really good forum post that stated that if Naruto was sent to the orphanage, that Danzo probably would have been more easily able to get his hands on him, and really that makes a lot of sense. Like, the orphanage in Konoha is kind of on the outskirts of the city, and therefore Danzo can kind of operate out there without people having eyes on him. However, Naruto's apartment building was very central and actually pretty close to the Hokage mansion, so it's a possibility that Hiruzen actually put him there so he could keep an eye on him and keep him away from Danzo. As to why he didn't move Sasuke, great question. And then lastly, the person that people blame is Kakashi. People say that Kakashi, as Minato's only surviving student, should have taken on the responsibility of raising Naruto. Except Kakashi was 15 at this time? He was probably closer to 16, 17, because he was 13 towards the end of the Third Great Shinobi World War, and this was 3 to 4 years after that. Which is, mind you, still very much too young to raise a child. At least on your own, that is. Especially when your entire life has been mired with loss. Kakashi lost his dad, his 2 best friends, his replacement dad, and Minato. And mind you, Kakashi actually wanted to go to the scene where Minato was fighting, but was held back by Hiruzen. And because Kakashi couldn't go to the scene where Minato and Kushina was fighting, he blamed himself for their deaths. And therefore, in Naruto's early infancy, he actually couldn't face Naruto because he blamed himself for his parents' deaths. And this is actually how Danzo recruits Kakashi to the root, because he was like,
Hey man, Hiruzen held you back. I wouldn't have done that. Come join my shadow organization.
to which Kakashi said yes. So do you think the child who had just lost everything and had been recruited into the Illuminati by essentially Naruto's Hitler was in a position to raise a baby? Naruto's upbringing is not anybody's fault in particular. In fact, Naruto's upbringing is meant to represent modern society's inability to protect our most vulnerable. How every day those who need support more than anybody else fall through the cracks of bureaucratic systems. And then how these incredibly vulnerable people at their lowest points are only met with contempt and hatred from a society that failed them. There's a million different people you can point at and say,
You could have helped him.
every person who ever passed Naruto on the streets had an opportunity to help him. But social stigma and pain kept every single person from stopping to reach out a hand. Naruto's story is a story of triumph and overcoming. Overcoming loss, overcoming malignant intent, but more importantly than everything, overcoming the shortcomings of those who were supposed to be there for you. The reason that the majority of us can't believe Naruto's story is because the majority of us were lucky enough not to live it. But every single day, children with as much potential and power as any other human on Earth fall through the cracks. And the only real reason we don't believe Naruto's story is because the man he turned into. Any human, any person has the ability to become the strongest, fastest, smartest human ever to live. So as we're sitting back and looking at who we can point fingers at to blame for Naruto's upbringing, let's take a look at ourselves and make sure that we're never one of those people that wouldn't have stopped to reach out a hand to him on the street. Because the thing much more important than finding out who was to blame for Naruto's upbringing is to find out how we can stop it from ever happening again. But what do I know? We're just talking Naruto theories, right? And if you guys liked my explanation of this Naruto theory, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, I'm not saying that almost everything bad that happens in Naruto can be blamed on Obito, but find me one situation that can't be.